Hello, New York City candidate. Grab your treasurer and your coffee and possibly a backup coffee and get ready. This video is going to get into the nittiest of nitty-gritty details about your campaign expenditures, like what type of spending is allowed, what exactly does qualified expenditures mean, what are your spending limits, and along the way, what kind of documentation will you need to keep? All of these little details may sound like a lot, but don't worry, we'll take you through it, piece by piece. And as always, your Candidate Services Liaison is here to help if any specific questions arise during your campaign. We promise it's all worth it because getting this right means getting to run. And getting to run means getting the chance to make a real difference in our city. First up, what's allowed? Spending that clearly furthers your campaign is okay. Things like staff salaries, rent for your campaign office, campaign mailings, and digital ads. What's not allowed are expenses that are made for personal use. The Campaign Finance Board will also be checking for the timing and necessity of anything you spend, how much it costs, and the documentation you provide, all of which we'll get into in a little bit. If you're ever unsure, check in with your Candidate Services Liaison before you spend any campaign dollars, because you can't unspend that money. Any spending you do should be done with your campaign's checks or debit card or an electronic payment that came directly from your campaign's bank account via an ACH transfer. If you're paying by check, make sure your bank can provide images of the front and back of each endorsed and deposited campaign check. A few things to avoid. Mobile payment apps. They don't usually provide enough documentation to meet the board's requirements. Paying in cash. Using a campaign credit card to spend money you don't yet have. There are also a few other ways to pay, but check out our site, as there are a lot of rules. Next up, understanding what makes an expenditure qualified or not. Expenditures that cannot be made with public funds, even if they're otherwise allowed, are called non-qualified expenses. Sometimes they'll include things like spending you did before or after the official election season, or payments you made to a family member, or a business owned by a family member. They might also include some payments made using cash or payments that are not properly documented. Qualified expenditures, on the other hand, refer to those that can be made using public funds. Because this money comes from the people, aka your neighbors and friends here all over the city, it comes with an enormous responsibility on the record-keeping side, so every public dollar you receive can be accounted for. This is another place to be super diligent, because you'll have to repay any public funds you can't document as qualified expenditures. Our site and your liaison remain great resources if you're ever unsure. The next section is all about the calendar of spending limits. Only candidates participating in the Matching Funds program need to pay attention to this next bit. For those who are, there are 3 different spending limits, depending not on when you make your purchases, but on when you use or benefit from the spending. Out-year spending means expenditures you make from the start of the election cycle through December 31st of the year before the election year. Primary election year spending refers to expenses that take place from January 1st through the date of the primary. And general election spending takes place from the day after the primary through the date of the general election, unless you didn't have a primary. Your expenses only count toward the spending limit when you actually use or benefit from what you're buying, not when you make the purchase. For example, if you buy stamps in the out-year period that you don't use until your primary election year, the expense counts towards your primary spending limit. All that's to say that your campaign spending matters, and you want to budget in a cushion and be careful not to overspend. When it comes to spending public money, it's part of the deal that everything is labeled just right, because your fellow New Yorkers have a right to know exactly how their dollars are spent. Finally, let's talk about documentation. It'd be safer to say there's no such thing as too much documentation. But really, keep all your invoices, receipts, checks, front and back, proof of electronic funds transfers, bank statements, payroll processing, your office lease, subcontractor disclosure forms, contracts, and timesheets from vendors, campaign workers, and consultants. You will also be far better served getting detailed documentation in real time along the way, because it can be hard to get from vendors and workers after the election. Whew, the coffee is long gone, but we're off to a great start. Get even more detail by going through the Campaign Finance Handbook on the New York City Campaign Finance Board website. by signing up for our compliance training, and, of course, by calling your Candidate Services Liaison.